Hello, lovely ladies, and welcome to the N.E.W Woman Elevate and Energize 6-week challenge. Today, we are going to look at an educational topic with regards to your health and wellness, and actually the most important of the topics that we will discuss. So over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to provide for you each week an educational video on a particular topic that will help you understand the importance and the need to implement these into your daily habits. So the topic for today is nutrition. So why is nutrition so important when it comes to our health and wellness? First and foremost, we are what we eat. So we are a product of what we put into our bodies every single day. Our health and wellness is abundantly impacted by our nutrition choices. So many of you have weight loss goals on this journey. Not everybody, but so many of you. And with regards to our weight loss journeys, nutrition will be the most fundamental element to your results. So, what do we talk about in the N.E.W Woman Elevate and Energize challenge with regards to our nutrition? There are 3 fundamental points that I will drive home to you over the next 6 weeks. Those being high protein diet, high fiber diet, and a low processed or minimally processed driven diet. So I just wanted to dive into each of those sections and talk about why each of those are so important. So the first thing I want to talk about is high protein. So everybody that will know me by the end of this challenge will be so sick of hearing the term protein is queen, because it truly is such an important part of our nutrition piece, and one of the elements that is missing from so many of our diets. There is a saying that protein doesn't happen by accident, and it truly doesn't. So it's one of those areas that when we're building our plate and when we're thinking about our meals, protein should be the very first thing that we plan onto our plate. All right. Why is protein so important? Well, when it comes to body composition, it will help to build beautiful, lean muscle tissue. It will help to preserve that beautiful, lean muscle tissue as we move through a weight loss phase. We want to see, and it will help increase our calorie burn. So our body will go through a process called protein synthesis, which will actually help to build lean muscle tissue. And the more lean muscle tissue we have on our body, the more calories we will actually burn. Protein is also one of the most important aspects of our nutrition because it actually helps to keep us full for a much longer period of time, as will fiber, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, how much protein should we be having? While I definitely don't want to be talking about calculations and having any of my clients calculate anything through this process, I would like to see you incorporating a good 20 to 30 grams worth of protein into each of your meals. So what does that really look like from a visual point of view? Well, we want to be focusing on the size of our palm when it comes to our protein source. So we're talking about on our plate, if we were to divide our plate into 4 equal sections, 1/4 of that plate should be filled with a lean protein source. So what are some of the most important what are some of the foods that have the most amount of protein in them? Well, as per the nutrition guide that I sent across to you as a resource, there is a list of proteins in there. But I want you to think about some lean chicken breast, turkey breast, salmon, tuna. From the dairy components, we've got cottage cheese and of course Greek yogurt, which is very high in protein. We've got eggs and egg whites. And from a plant-based perspective, we've got things like lentils and chickpeas and tofu. Great sources of protein there. We can also look at incorporating a protein powder or either a whey or a plant-based protein powder to help increase that protein for you. So that is one of the most important elements with regards to our nutrition is our protein. So thinking about when we're starting to build our meals, we start with protein. We think about incorporating 1/4 of our plate as that lean protein, and then we move on to our fiber. So the second most important piece of the nutrition puzzle, is our fiber. So incorporating a high fiber diet. What does fiber equate to? Well, it equates to vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, and legumes. Why is fiber so important? It really is the silent hero when it comes to our health and weight loss journey. Regulating the appetite by adding volume to your meals is one of the most important factors. And also keeping you fuller for longer, as I suggested earlier. So the thing with fiber is a lot of the time, fibrous foods like your vegetables and your legumes and things like that will be more bang for your buck. So you're going to get more volume in those foods with regard to per calorie count. So if you think about, 100 calories worth of broccoli is going to be a lot more than, say, for example, 100 calories of rice. Now, we'll talk about some whole grain rice, some whole grains in a minute, and brown rice being one of them, absolutely. But thinking about how we build our plate and how we incorporate some fiber into our plate. So again, going back to building up our plate, if you think about our plate into 4 equal sections, a half of that plate, so 2 of those quarters, should be filled with some sort of high fiber foods. So thinking about your vegetables and your fruits and your legumes, any sorts of seeds and nuts as well, all right? One of the biggest factors with regard to fiber is the impact that it has on our blood sugar. Now, without getting too sciencey, I don't want to scare anybody off, but blood sugar swings, having these really big volatile blood sugar swings, which we do experience when we're eating foods that are highly processed and high in refined sugars, can really, really spike our blood sugar levels. And with that spike in blood sugar comes a spike in our insulin levels. So insulin is a fat storage hormone. So the higher and the more prolonged periods our body has with higher insulin levels, the more our bodies are in a fat storage mode rather than a fat burning mode. So why is that important with regards to our health and weight loss journey? Well, of course, the longer we're in a fat storage mode, the less amount of time that we have or our bodies have to be in a fat burning mode. And ultimately, we want to reduce those sugar spikes and therefore reduce those insulin spikes by focusing on our high protein and high fiber diet, okay? The other thing with fiber is it is fantastic for our gut health, and gut health is something that is really on the rise with regards to research at the moment, but we know already in the early stages of gut health research how important it is in terms of linkage to weight loss, regulated weight health, and also our overall health and mental well-being, so physical and mental well-being. So thinking about fiber being incredibly important for our gut health, as well as boosting our digestion and natural detox pathways. All right, so fiber is so underestimated. Guys, it is one of those areas that, we do not, as a population, we do not get anywhere near as much fiber as we need to. What sort of foods am I talking about when it comes to fiber? Well, of course, vegetables, any and all vegetables. I want you to think about eating the rainbow. The next time you're at the supermarket, have a wander around the fruit and veg section. Have a look at what's on special. A lot of the time there'll be particular vegetables that you haven't cooked with before. Well, that could be an awesome opportunity for you to pick up some of that, say for example, bok choy. Get it home, have a Google, look at some delicious recipes that you can incorporate, say for example, bok choy with. So it's a great way to incorporate some variety into your diet. But when we're talking about vegetables, I really want you to think about those beautiful dark leafy greens, some broccoli, we're talking about capsicum, carrot, zucchini, squash, cauliflower, what else? The list is endless, really, when it comes to our vegetables. But we're also talking about fruit when we're talking about fiber. And I'm not talking about fruit juice. Fruit juice is essentially the delicious, juicy component of the fruit with the fiber removed from it. So I'm not talking about juicing. Smoothies are different. We can definitely incorporate fruits into smoothies. But we're talking about eating fruits with the skin on. So some of the best fruits that you can incorporate into your diet are berries, all types of berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, boysenberries, acai berries, also apples, pears, all these sorts of fruits, like the color of the rainbow, incorporating fruits into your diet is also a really great way to incorporate fiber. Legumes are a big one, and one that I don't think a lot of people incorporate because of the fear of the digestive issues that come along with legumes. However, if you are to look at incorporating and slowly increasing your legume in nutrition, then what you will find is that your body will adapt to that. So the reason that we have these digestive issues when we're incorporating these things like beans and chickpeas and lentils is because we don't get enough of it, unfortunately. So what I would highly suggest is start to have a look at some recipes, or start Googling some recipes that incorporate some of these legumes, and just increasing that amount in your diet slowly, so that our body has time to become attuned to it as well. All right. Seeds. Seeds are huge for fiber, and I'm talking seeds like chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, all of these, sunflower seeds, all of these types of seeds that we can incorporate into salads or into our smoothies. They are going to provide a really, really great amount of fiber into our diet. All right. And then the last one I want you to think about is whole grains. When I'm talking whole grains, I'm talking about brown rice, not white rice. I'm talking about oats, quinoa, some wholemeal pastas and things like that. Now, it's not really overly popular, and that's so fine. I love brown rice over white rice. It is something that I think you do just have to get used to. But of course, I don't say that you can't have anything. So white rice and white pastas are definitely something that we can incorporate, but just have a think about those as not a part of your high fiber diet. All right. So protein is queen. Of course, we add that to our plate first and foremost. Then the fiber comes. Where can I add fiber into my meals? For breakfast, if I'm having a cooked brekkie, can I incorporate some dark leafy greens? Can I incorporate some vegetables, some mushies, some tomatoes? If I'm having more of a lighter breakfast, can I have some berries, or can I add a piece of fruit to my breakfast as well? Lunch, same sort of thing, like thinking about salads and veggies, and incorporating smoothies into your diet is a really, really, really good way to incorporate some of that fiber. Okay. Now, the last pillar with regard to your nutrition that I will talk about is processed foods. So this is one of those areas that we want to work and look at reducing processed foods in our diet. Now, I've talked to each of you about the 80-20 rule, and at N.E.W Woman, that is a standard that we live by. I live by an 80-20 rule with regards to every component of my health and well-being, whether that be nutrition, whether that be exercise, wellness. Okay, we can never be perfect. I've also talked to each of you about this idea of feeding our bodies, but also feeding our soul and our minds. All right, there's a term called emotional eating that if we try to turn that off, basically you will end up down the track having those sorts of moments where you're, looking to binge eat on those sorts of foods that you're completely trying to cut out of your diet. So when I talk about processed foods, I'm talking about incorporating those as a 20% rule into our nutrition. All right. We really want to think about those foods as feeding our soul, feeding our emotions, rather than feeding our body. The biggest issue with processed foods is the lack of nutrition. So unfortunately, in the day and age that we're in at the moment, our diets are very processed food driven. What that does is it prevents or doesn't provide our body with the amount of nutrients that it needs, so particularly those minerals and micronutrients. It also, it really does the work for our body in terms of processing that food. So our body actually utilizes energy. When we ingest or take in food, our body uses energy, so expends energy breaking down that food. Now, the more processed that food, the less energy our body needs to actually utilize. And that's not a good thing. We want our bodies to be utilizing that energy. We want our bodies to be breaking down that food and extracting those nutrients, shuttling those off to the right places for our body to use, for our processes, for our hormone regulation, for building muscle, for, burning energy, being able to exercise, and just general life, day-to-day activity, incorporating less of that brain fog so that we've got a little bit of a clearer mind and things like that. So we really do want to provide our body with as much non-processed or as minimally processed food as possible so that our bodies can do the work, so that we can provide our bodies with the nutrients that it absolutely needs to thrive. Okay? I do want to talk about treats, and this is something that I'm really, really passionate about, and I've spoken to most of you about this already, is incorporating a treat into your diet. Now, most of the time, it doesn't have to be processed foods, but most of the time when we think about treats, it is a processed version of whatever it is that we love. And that's so fine. Again, it's a 20% part of our diet, and we want to be incorporating those treats because we want to really avoid that all or nothing mentality when it comes to our nutrition. That is the biggest downfall that I've found over the years with regards to people being able to be successful in their health and weight loss journey, but also being able to sustain it beyond a 6-week period, which is the ultimate goal for you, okay? So, focusing on some fresh produce, some lean proteins, whole grains, some healthy fats into our diet as well. And I would definitely recommend you constantly referring back to that Nutrition 101 guide that was sent through to you for resources. Before I wrap up today, I do want to talk about alcohol. Dun, dun, dun. So alcohol being one of those factors that, love it or hate it, it is a toxin to our body. So we do want to think about alcohol as its absolute own macronutrient. And here is why. So alcohol, as I said, it is a toxin to our body. So the moment that we ingest alcohol, we, as in our bodies, will immediately stop all other digestive processes, because what it's recognized is that we've just put a toxin into our body. This is potentially harmful, life-threatening to us, in major quantities. And the priority for our bodies is to remove that alcohol first and foremost. So what does that mean? Well, it means any fat burning that was occurring prior to you having that alcohol, that's now been halted, stopped immediately, so that the body can now focus on metabolizing this alcohol. The other thing it means is that obviously when we have alcohol, a lot of the time what happens is that comes with some inhibitions, and we can make some not so great nutritious choices. However, what happens is whatever food that we incorporate into our body or take into our body during that time of alcohol consumption, it's not being processed, it's not being digested. It's simply sitting there waiting for that alcohol to be processed first, and then our body will get to that food. So that's ultimately not the best in terms of thinking about those sugar spikes. So once the food is in our body, we will start to see a shoot up in that insulin levels. We will then start to see a prolonged period of insulin in our bloodstream. And again, that's a fat storage mode, not a fat burning mode. So the ultimate goal is to reduce our alcohol consumption. I do not talk about removing anything from our diets. Of course, alcohol can definitely play a part in your diet or your lifestyle. But I like to think about having in a 7-day week at least 4, if not 5, non-alcoholic days, okay? So just to recap before I shoot off for today, I wanted to reinforce when we're building our plates, we're thinking protein is queen. She comes first. We are incorporating that into our meal first and foremost, followed by our fiber. So half of our plate being filled with those really, really good, nutritious fiber foods. And then the other quarter of our plate can be incorporated with some more of those carbohydrate-y rich foods, all right? So things like your white rices, your pastas, your potatoes and things like that. Then I want you to think about reducing those processed foods and alcohol, but don't forget, it's super important to incorporate that treat into your diet every day, because we don't want to feel restricted at all. Alrighty. All right, gang. Well, that's it from me. If you've got any questions, please feel free to shoot me through some questions, or shoot me through any comments on, that you might have. You've got your Nutrition 101 guide, so always refer back to that. And of course, me being your coach, I'm here anytime to answer any questions for you. I hope that you're enjoying the challenge so far, and I can't wait to speak with you guys again next week.